Hey everyone, and thanks for jumping back into the cryptoverse. Today we're going to talk about Ethereum, and we're going to be primarily looking at the Ethereum Bitcoin valuation. Sometimes we have to dig deep when it comes to Ethereum. Now, if you guys like the content, make sure you subscribe to the channel. 150,000 subscribers, we're almost there. Give the video a thumbs up. Also check out the Telegram channel, which you can find a link to in the description below. Let's go ahead and jump in. So, we've been here many times before. I don't know exactly when the turnaround point is going to be. Could be another week or so, could be shorter, could be longer. But the point is that we've been here before, and if history is any indication, then we are going to be approaching a turnaround point in the not so distant future. One of the things we can look to is the RSI, the Relative Strength Index. We don't always look at this, but I do think it's sometimes useful to gauge where we are. We discussed this at length back in December. If you guys remember, we talked about we needed to reach around the 25 level, give or take, basically noting that that was the level, historically speaking, that we got to in prior Decembers before having incredible bounces in January. And that's why we discussed our looming Etheruem or Etheruem major move of Ethereum against Bitcoin. Okay? Now, December went to Bitcoin. January went to Ethereum. February went to Bitcoin. Now I'm hoping that March goes to Ethereum. And let me show you some of the evidence for why I think we could see a turnaround point at some point in March, okay? It might not be March 1st, but maybe the first week of March, maybe the second week of March. The RSI, so if we look at the RSI on the daily is coming down quite quickly. And if you're not familiar with the RSI, above 70 is generally overbought, below 30 is generally oversold. I did a video when we got to this point at the top of this channel, and I talked about the idea that the momentum could be changing, and that if you're overexposed on Ethereum, you might consider converting some of it to Bitcoin. Naturally, people don't like it when you say things like the momentum could shift. I mean, I didn't definitively say that I would, but the idea of getting back to the top of the channel, we know that, yeah, I mean, if history is any indication, 1, 2, 3, 4, there's a decent chance we come back down. Therefore, I think in the not so distant future, we'll probably come back up to the top of the channel again. And just remember that opportunity when it comes. Your rational mind now can probably understand the opportunity that that would present, rather than your future self, considering that it's only going to keep going up. But if you look at the daily RSI right now, it's at around 32. If it gets below 30, we're going to be oversold. It's rapidly going to that area. You can see we had a major bounce at an RSI daily of 25 back in December. We've had bounces around this level before. Now, if you zoom in here, the bounce in December, we sort of came up, and then we came back down for a few days and then went up again. And the area that we reaccumulated more or less was right here, which is exactly where we currently are. So I'm not saying that we're about to have a momentum shift like tomorrow or anything, but I would not be surprised if it happened. A lot of times the momentum shifts, I think, can also come like on the start of a new week. So imagine the Ether Bitcoin valuation just gets completely demolished, say on a Sunday. Then come Monday, there have been a lot of times where that is where the momentum shift occurred. And if you look at, say, the weekly bars here, if you look at the weekly bars, you can see that we sort of ended this week, and then we had the next week with it all the way down here as well, and then we started to come back up to the top of the channel. Now, if you guys remember a long time ago, before we even got in this green band, you might wonder why I always have this green band drawn. I've said before, we have plenty of videos on it in the past, that our prior peaks tend to be our future sort of cool down phases before capitulation, which then later on tend to be our reaccumulation zone. So I've said for over a year now that this green band will likely be the Ether Bitcoin reaccumulation zone. We were talking about it when we were over here. You can see we've spent a lot of time in it. We've only exited the band for a little over 2 weeks or so since we entered it back in July of 2020. The Ether Bitcoin valuation has ranged between 0.028 more or less up to 0.042 for a majority of the time we left it here briefly, a couple wicks here, a little bit above it here. But so far, I think that that sort of thesis has stood the test of time, that this is our Ethereum Bitcoin reaccumulation phase. Now, what my interpretation of what's going on is that, the general narrative again is that anything but Ethereum, because the Ethereum gas fees are so high, that all these other coins are going to completely overtake Ethereum. I don't think this is the case. I mean, I do own a lot of other coins. Like, I mean, I own Cardano. It's my primary hedge against Ethereum. Probably you guys know that. Probably many of you own Cardano as well. I also have Polkadot. And I don't think there's anything wrong with hedging our positions. But at the end of the day, I don't think that either of those projects are going to overtake Ethereum in terms of market capitalization. I just simply don't think it's going to happen. I think that they'll perform well this market cycle. They'll probably have higher returns than Ethereum. And that's the reason why I hold those altcoins, is because they will likely have more volatility, but I expect them to have higher returns than Ethereum. If I didn't think they were going to outperform Ethereum, I wouldn't hold them, to be completely honest. You might say, well, why do you hold Ethereum? Well, it's a safer bet. It's a safer bet. It's been around a lot longer. There's a lot more developers. It's more decentralized. As I've said before, to some degree, a lot of projects that are quote unquote solving a lot of the Ethereum issues, to some degree, they're not actually improving decentralization, right? Ethereum is decentralized, and they're trying to solve these problems while maintaining this high level of decentralization. The other projects are sacrificing some level of decentralization. I'm not going to go into all the specifics because I do not try to base this channel on fundamental analysis, but I do believe that Ethereum is approaching it in the right way. That doesn't, I'm not trying to diminish what other projects are doing. I think there's a space for Cardano, that's why I own it. I think there's a space for Polkadot, that's why I own it. But I also think there's a space for Ethereum. We have by far the most developers on Ethereum. I think it will stand the test of time, and it will turn around. And while it's going down right now against Bitcoin, there's certainly a lot of criticism that comes with that, because it's not the cool thing to say that it's going to turn around. In the same way we discussed it in December, we came out the other side. We're discussing it now. I think we will come out the other side, but we have to dig deep, okay? And it's likely going to continue going down, as we say every single Ethereum video. The Ethereum Bitcoin valuation will continue to go down, most likely, as long as Bitcoin volatility is staying high. And if we're looking at Bitcoin daily candles, it's mostly just going down. Ethereum's not going to garnish any type of confidence in terms of making a major move, while the Bitcoin valuation is just bleeding day in and day out. So we need Bitcoin to stabilize, whether that means stabilizing at, say, the 50-day moving average, right? I mean, obviously it dropped below the 20-day. It's possible that it just stabilizes somewhere below here and doesn't drop to the 50-day. We have to consider that as a possibility. But if we look at, say, the 50-day moving average, that's where it found support last time. Just again to put that on the chart, it's currently at around 41,000. Not saying it's going to drop there, but that might be an area to look at for support. If not there, I'd be looking towards the potentially the bull market support band, which is all the way down here. So with that in mind, we see that the Bitcoin's coming down. Whether it stabilizes here or down here, I would expect Ethereum to make a move. It will require Bitcoin stabilization. If you go back again to 2017, Bitcoin bounced off the 50-day, and it was this little bunny hill right here that led to the major Ethereum surge. So when it comes to Ethereum, I will remain resolute on this. I'm not going to waver on it. I know a lot of people would like me to say things like Cardano or Polkadot are going to overtake it. I do not believe that is true. Just being honest with you guys, I've seen this type of narrative play out before. We saw the exact same thing last cycle. Ethereum will bounce back. We just have to figure out when it's going, or we have to be patient, because I don't know what's going to happen, but I do think it'll bounce back. If we look at, here's an interesting thing I found. Well, it's not that interesting. If you look at say if we go back to the Ether Bitcoin valuation, we were talking about the RSI. Now let's pull up the weekly RSI. Okay, let's look at that. That back in December, it bottomed at around 40, and right now it's around 46 or so. So since the bull market started for Ethereum right here, it's more or less bottomed at around this level, with the exception of December of 2020. So let me put this on the chart so you guys can see it. So let's look at this. The weekly RSI, so it bottomed here, and we had a nice bounce. It bottomed here, and we had a nice bounce. It bottomed around this area, and we had a little bit of a bounce. And then now we're at this level, which is the same level we've been at 3 separate times. So that's why I'm saying I don't know when Ethereum Bitcoin's going to bounce, but if it did bounce here, I would not be surprised. Now the main one that went lower was our December capitulation, which we talked about for about 4 months, preparing for this December capitulation of the Ethereum Bitcoin valuation. We said it'll likely be a Q4 bleed. If history is any indication, the bottom will be in December, and then we'll see a surge in January. We'll nickname it Etheruem. We'll make a lot of money. We'll sing Kumbaya, and we'll do it all over again next year. But let's see what happens, in the intermediate time frame. We're at this level again at about 46. Maybe we'll bounce soon. Okay. Again, it's going to depend on exactly what Bitcoin does. If Bitcoin drops to say 41, I would expect Ethereum to drop another $100 to $200 at the very least. Okay. I don't think that the absolute valuation of Ethereum's US dollar valuation is really that important. What's more important is looking at how it's valued against Bitcoin, because ultimately that's all that matters. Because if we can't ever outperform Bitcoin, then we don't justify holding Ethereum in the first place. You might say, well, it's not outperforming it now, but I should say ye of little faith. If you look at how far we've come in such a short period of time. I mean, even coming from, like, say, the wick here on January 6th, the Ether Bitcoin valuation is still up 80%. This is January 6th, 2020. It's up 80% over about 13, 14 months or so. So it is outperforming Bitcoin. It's just doing it in a manner where you sort of have these little bunny hills on the way, okay? And I think that we're going to continue to trend up over the market cycle. It's not going to be a straight up move. We've had this channel drawn on here we've had this channel drawn on the YouTube channel for about a year now, a little over a year. We did adjust it one time slightly, but it's mostly been on here for about a year. And I've said before, I think this is the way the market cycle will remember the Ethereum Bitcoin valuation. Maybe we sometimes come below it, maybe we sometimes go above it, but for the most part, this is the channel that I think, for the most part, this market cycle will remember the Ethereum Bitcoin valuation. Now, I should say that I do think this cycle will be a longer one. At some point, it's possible that we consolidate for a while and maybe we do go sideways, but I do think we would probably get back on course at some point if that were to happen. Now, right now, the Ether Bitcoin valuation is around 0.0302. So 0.0302. Again, the weekly RSI is around 44. We've seen it bounce around this level before. The daily RSI is currently not, by the strictest definition, oversold, but it's getting close. Something interesting I noted, if you look at the daily time frame. Let's look at the daily time frame. RSI strategy. So basically, I did this to sort of show you where we were. And let me just show you the inputs that I used so that you can see. I used 25 and 74 for oversold and overbought. You can see that during the bull market, it has been pretty good, right? It doesn't predict everyone, obviously, but oversold, overbought. Oversold, overbought. If it flashes again oversold, then that might be a key indication that the shift is about to happen. And if you look at it, we said it's 25. So if we pull up 25 here, let's see where 25 would be on this chart. It would be right here. So if you see, let me change this so you guys can see it. Okay, so we had a bottom here, the Ether Bitcoin valuation. We had a bottom here. If we drop a little bit more, let's imagine that we continue down for say another week or so. If we continue down and hit this, I would say there's a decent chance we are going to have a bounce of the Ether Bitcoin valuation. Maybe it comes back down to the bottom of the channel, and then bounces back up, and we start moving back up. This is what I'm looking for. Sometimes you got to dig deep. It's not like it's going to be, these games that we play are not always easy. It takes a lot of perseverance. I think this cycle is going to be a long one, so we're going to experience these every step of the way. 30% drops, 40% drops. If you look at, say, the Ether Bitcoin valuation bleed from here to here, it was a 44% drop before turning around. If you look from, say, this point to this point, it was about 28%, or you could say maybe here to 27% before it turned around. So far, we're down about 34%. This is just par for the course. We've seen it a million times. We'll probably see it a million more times. Hopefully this video has been useful. It's not the most glamorous type of video. It's somewhat of a boring video. But I think looking at these types of things is useful in trying to determine when the Ether Bitcoin valuation could theoretically turn around, right? Because we need to understand where we are. Right now, Bitcoin is at 44,000. So as we said, if it keeps going down, we'll certainly expect the Ether Bitcoin valuation to bleed until Bitcoin finds some level of support. At that time, that is when I think Ether Bitcoin can recover and it'll come back in all of its glory, assuming Bitcoin does not capitulate to, say, the 20-week moving average. If you guys like the content, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Certainly subscribe, because we certainly like having people view the channel and sharing the information. Give the video a thumbs up. Check out the Telegram channel in the description below. Remember, we have the premium list. You can find a link to the sale on that in the description below. Make sure you guys check that out if you want access to the exclusive content, where I go way more in depth, if you can imagine, than I do on the public channel. Thank you guys for tuning in. Subscribe. I'll see you next time. Bye.